Afternoon to everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to speak again within the framework of the Radenci conference, even if this year is a virtual one. I hope you can see my screen. The topic I'm going to talk today is the one that I'm ruminating about for several times, and I want to state from the beginning, it is not a definitive answer. It is rather an exploratory paper on this topic. But I hope it will, even if it will not give definitive answer, it will give an opportunity to ponder about it. Yes, let me see how I can navigate further on. This will be the today agenda. What is the starting point? Definition and implication of the record system for aggregation of records, for arrangement and description. In general, as am I speaking now from the position of the historical archivist, when we are looking to the records, we see the files, we see the registers, and we try to compile finding aids in order to increase accessibility. But at the closer, all these items looks rather similar, we like archivists, we are imposing the order over them and our standard description methods and description tools. But at a closer look, sometimes we can identify within these records a sort of connection between them that is generated by the way those records were created, the purpose of their creation, and the way they were connected to each other. Maybe the most simple example would be for those who have records from the last part of the 19th century, from the monarchy. Those who are working with this knows that we have an entry protocol, we have an archive plan, we have a number, we have indexes, all those systems helping us to land on a certain topic, on a certain file in order to retrieve it. So even if we do not have the records at a given moment, we still have this network of relations that lead us to the information in the records. And this gives us a perspective over how the records were managed and used by the creator. It is the same thing today when you think for example, human resources department or accountability. They have certain regulation for their core records that are supporting each other. The personal files, the registration of these files with indexes in order to retrieve a certain person and so on. All these would constitute a record system. As a formal definition, the ISO 15489 states that the record system is an information system which captures, manages, and provides access to records over time. But the most important thing of their definition, I think, is the additional notice, saying that the system can consist of technical elements like software and non-technical elements, including policies, procedures, peoples, and other agents, and assigned responsibilities. In the paper, I was presenting extensively several definitions from various sources. I kept this definition from ISO 15489, and I only want to draw now your attention to the definition I found in a UK National Archives document from 2000, saying that a record system is an information or process system that contains records and other information, and that it can be either paper-based or digital system. But more important is the focus on a definition from a Canadian standard that claims that the whole of a record system is the whole of organizations' records and records management and record preservation system that controls them. So from the Canadian perspective, the record system contains records, is not only the framework. Going through all these definitions, there are some things that can be concluded. First of all, the record system may be also on paper, not only electronic, though in today's professional literature, most references to the record system are done with the electronic system in mind. But electronic tools are only, electronic record systems are only the tools, the technical part along the performance of processes associated with the records. All the other part, the procedural things, the responsibilities, the people working are part of the record system. A second point is that the record systems exist naturally, if we can say that, by the implicit or explicit set of rules and responsibilities used for the creation and management of records. So if it's not necessarily defined or visible, it doesn't mean it does not exist. And this is the explanation why ISO 16175 asserted that all organizations will have at least one, and generally more than one, record system. The third point is that the record system is rather a management framework, hosting and regulate records organization and use. The Canadian standard is the only one that examined the record system is the record itself. Another position in this would be from our Italian colleague Mariela Gercia, who said that a record system is constituted by a complex of interrelated records and includes within its essential components the ensemble of their relationship, what is called the archival bond, vincolo archivistico. Despite these various approaches, my position and my perspective in this paper will be that the record system is the framework, the management framework of things, and not the records that are created and managed by this system. If we try to see the impact of the record system of aggregation of records, we need to think a little bit about how the records are created. As a hyper simplified model, we have a function, we have agents, we have records. The agents are performing certain functions, which of course are granted to them by certain mandates. And these agents with different level of granularity creates different levels of records, levels or groups of records or sets of records, whatever, it doesn't matter in this argumentation. But this approach, which is rather consistent with ISO-G, for instance, it's not necessarily the real one in practice, because if we look carefully to the creation of records, we can notice that there might coexist different record systems. One for accountability, which have their own rules, regulations, responsibilities for the specific task they do. The human resources, the core activities, for instance, in education or in justice or in constructions. And this record system or sub-record system of the organizational level may be cross-sectorial. That is, for instance, in fiscal area, there are rules at the country level which are common for all organizations. It's not necessarily to have different rules for aggregation and preserving records resulting from related to the fiscal aspect. As a very schematic presentation, I would choose a case for a tribunal. And in their archive, their record center, they have case files, which is the result of the production of their performing their core activities, administering justice. They have records from the accountability, they have records from the HR. The case files are governed by the rules and the responsibility assigned by the rules issued by the Ministry of Justice. It may be a different case in other countries. This is the case in Romania, but I think it can be understandable, the perspective. Also, for the accountability, there's the Ministry of Finance who issue regulations. It is the Ministry of Labor who issue regulations about how records about human resources should be compiled and preserved and kept, and how the records related to each other. Though all these are governed, we might say, record systems governed by other authorities and the creators, in the records center of the tribunal, they are all preserved together. They are considered tribunal paper records. In a digital realm, a new level of complexity may appear, because we can have them in a very similar manner as we had it on paper. So the tribunal has its own system that manages everything. Or we can have various systems administered by those who issued the regulation, that is the Ministry of Justice, of Finance, or of Labor, and the tribunal and or other similar organization would connect to those systems in order to administer their records. So even if from the perspective of our traditional perspective of the archives, the tribunal is the creator of the records, they are not under their proper management, but on the management of the record system, again, of the one who administer the social function, the ambient function, or the sectorial function of the activity. Or even a more complex system, it might be when these shared systems may be used by the tribunal, they are administered by the head of that sector, but the tribunal as a, let's say, local creator may have its own system that is connected with the other record system that are used by the organization. Maybe the first question that pop up now into the mind of the archivist looking to the diagram is, where is the fund now? Where are the who hold everything in one place for the archive of the tribunal? Well, if this is that would be the schematic presentation about the implication of the record system, the creation of records. What about the arrangement of this and the description? Well, identifying the record system may or should have, in my opinion, a relevance on processes of archival arrangement and the description. First of all, if it is to identify the original arrangement and the internal provenance in an archive, the record system is relevant. We look here, I go back to the previous slide. We have in fact a parallel provenance here. Yes, we have the records that are created by the tribunal, but in fact the holder of the record is the Ministry of Justice through their system. We see the implications and we raise the question, we ask the question, which is the true creator of the records, which is the true creator of the fonts in this case. So it is questions that pertains to the arrangement process. But David Bierman, even in 1990s, asserted that identifying the provenance and relating it to the record system is in fact the only true provenance and not the structure or even the functions of a certain organization. Another reason for which record system I consider is relevant for arrangement is that it helps to draw the boundaries of the records aggregation. We organize and we consider in theory that we organize the fonts, the big aggregation of records into series, into subfonts and so on. But sometimes the criteria used to make this separation may be questionable. And here is an example. In paper world, we had personal files as separate series. We have indexes for the Human Resources Department as a separate series. If we use an electronic system now, we may have all this series of records embedded into one digital system, which is more further on administered by a different entity than the creator of the records itself. So where are the boundaries for this? This is a question to ask, and it needs some answers when you arrange the fonts. Another question which is relevant and is raised by mainly by the digital system today, but it was, or it should have been explored also in the paper world, is what happens if the record system is decommissioned. Decommissioning now means the digital system cease to be used. So no matter what activity, it stopped the function to be performed, or a new system will be implemented. But it also happened in paper world when, for instance, the retention schedule was considered obsolete, and the new retention schedule assigning new codes for a series of records was implemented. Shall we consider in this case that we have continuous series over various record system, or shall we delineate series as being managed and being dictated by the record system itself? In some archives, for instance, a change in the reference code of the series means there is a new series no matter the content. In others, these series are continuing. As about archival description, you know the definition from ISO-G, it is very much cited, but I want to emphasize that the standard says that archival description implied identification of the context and the record system which produced the records. Despite that, there is not a clear place where the record system should be described. We may speculate that it might be in the element of archival history or in the system of arrangement. But in fact, the record system is more than history, and it is more than mere arrangement. Moreover, considering the hierarchical system prescribed by ISO-G, we see the incompatibility of the standard and of a description of a record system, because the records relations between record system and aggregations are maybe one-to-one, one-to-n, or n-to-1. So basically, it needs a multi-dimensional presentation and not a simple hierarchical, mono-hierarchical one. If we try to employ for description of the record system the new standard, the new conceptual model, the record in context, we might have the possibility to describe the record system by uses entities and relations. And just as a very general schema, not very much polished, we might have, for instance, the Ministry of Education, which is responsible for issue of regulations, of creation, management, and use of records. This regulation, which is a rule, governs the activity. These activities are performed by various agents, high schools, schools, universities, that issuing are creating various records, which are part of the system of education, national archives of education, I call it here, it's just an invented model. Archives, which is governed or is controlled by the IT system, National Registry for Education Records, I call it, which is a mechanism, a sort of type of agent. So in theory, this is possible to be described by using this one. But my concern is that such descriptions are too complex and are not really feasible to be done. I don't envisage any situation when the users, the archivist will create such a complex description. So as conclusions, the records are produced by the organization or individuals in the regular course of business, as we all know, but also according to a set of rules, responsibilities, and by using supporting tools, which means record systems. As such, record systems seem to best preserve provenance because they are, besides the creator of records, the one who are intimately related with the producing of records. In theory, it would be possible, as I said, to accommodate record system descriptions in archival descriptions, but the complexity of description makes this action a difficult endeavor. As such, I believe that the record system will continue to be present in description rather implicitly, even in the cases where automated system will basically determine the limits of series or subfronts. Thank you. More details and more abstract presentation and consideration in the paper.